As serum acidity goes up, the oxygen carrying capacity and the oxygen affinity of hemoglobin goes down. So if you're dumping a lot of acids, the hydrogen ions or other metabolic waste products during a strenuous activity, the oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin actually goes down, and thus the oxygen delivery to metabolically active tissue is decreased as well, impairing your performance, endurance, and stamina. So Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate might actually mitigate this effect to a certain extent and improve and sustain oxygen delivery to metabolically active tissue, even if the acidity of the bloodstream goes up to a certain extent. Let's get into the evidence-based unique characteristics of Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate and see what else we can find in scientific evidence. ITPP increases the oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin and the oxygen release from red blood cells without altering serum hematocrit or total red blood cell count, stemming from human subjects, animal models, and in vitro studies using human red blood cells. ITPP sustains oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin and oxygen release from red blood cells during increased serum acidity, which is known as the Bohr effect. The Bohr effect means that as serum acidity goes up, the oxygen carrying capacity and the oxygen affinity of hemoglobin goes down. So if you're dumping a lot of acids, the hydrogen ions or other metabolic waste products during a strenuous activity, the oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin actually goes down, and thus the oxygen delivery to metabolically active tissue is decreased as well, impairing your performance, endurance, and stamina. So Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate might actually mitigate this effect to a certain extent and improve and sustain oxygen delivery to metabolically active tissue, even if the acidity of the bloodstream goes up to a certain extent. ITPP was shown to have a dose-dependent increase in hemoglobin oxygen binding affinity up to 31% and an increase in exercise capacity up to 57% in an animal model using mice. You can see that that was observed after a single administration of 500 milligrams ITPP to 3000 milligrams ITPP per 1 kilogram of body weight by intraperitoneal injection. That's straight into the abdomen. And that would mean between 40.5 milligrams to 243.2 milligrams per 1 kilogram of body weight for humans, albeit through intramuscular administration, which I feel intraperitoneal versus intramuscular has similar pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. When ITPP is administered orally in an animal model using mice, it increases hemoglobin oxygen binding affinity by only 16%, so that's approximately half of what we discussed through intraperitoneal injection, and the exercise capacity only increased by 34%, still approximately half, give or take. This was observed at 20 milligrams Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate per 1 milliliters of water consumed as needed, which is ad libitum. A mice usually consumes approximately 5.8 milliliters of water over the day, resulting in a total intake of ITPP of about 116 milligrams, and this was administered daily between 4 to 8 days. And if you convert that to humans, that would be 9.4 milligrams per 1 kilogram body weight orally daily, again, for multiple days in succession, which is about 940 milligrams per 1 kilogram bodybuilder, which is well beyond the dosage recommendations that we're going to make a little bit later on in this video. ITPP has a dose-dependent increase in exercise capacity up to 71% in animal models using transgenic mice with severe heart failure. This was observed after a single administration between 1,000 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams ITPP per 1 kilogram of body weight by intraperitoneal injection, which is between 81.1 to 162.2 milligrams ITPP per 1 kilogram of body weight intramuscularly daily for humans. ITPP decreases hypoxia-inducible factor 1 messenger RNA expression by 61.9% in the myocardium in an animal model using mice. Again, the dosage calculations are on the screen because it's very similar to the previous one. And ITPP doesn't offer any vasodilating effects stemming from the same animal model using mice. There was no effects on heart rate, no effects on systolic or diastolic blood pressure. And again, the dosage ranges and the human equivalent dose details are on the screen. And using all of the aforementioned scientific evidence on the animal models using mice, this dosage range converting the animal dose to the human equivalent dose, that would be between 940.5 milligrams to, let's say, 24,300 milligrams for a 100 kilogram bodybuilder. And even 940 milligrams Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate daily for a 100 kilogram bodybuilder when administered orally, I would say that dose that is way too high and not dosages I would generally recommend. ITTP attenuates cellular hypoxia, which reduces vascular endothelial growth factor and hypoxia-inducible factor 1 alpha levels, stemming from an in vitro study using human red blood cells, which reduces hypoxia-induced angiogenesis. Now, again, this is an in vitro study, so we can't really extrapolate a dosage range for human individuals from this data, but it does mean that angiogenesis might be impaired, especially if you ramp up the dose of ITTP beyond what is recommended to improve your endurance and stamina. And this might actually hinder your endurance and stamina or impair wound healing if you do this for longer periods of time. But on the flip side of that, ITTP administration might actually restore liver function and prevent liver failure after hepatectomy, which is the removal of a significant amount of liver tissue from the liver during surgery. ITPP normalizes steatosis and metabolic or regenerative deficiencies post-surgery, again, an animal model using mice. ITTP was shown to reduce hypoxia-inducible factor 2 alpha, which is primarily found in the liver. It restores downstream peroxisome proliferator activated receptor alpha and peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma co-activator 1A expression, which contributes to mitochondrial function. And this was observed at a single administration of either 25 milligrams or 500 milligrams Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate per 1 kilogram of body weight intravenously before surgery, which translates to 2 milligrams or 40.5 milligrams per 1 kilogram of body weight for humans. So even though ITTP administration before surgery might lower angiogenesis and delay the recovery of liver function in this context, it might promote mitochondrial function and thus the overall antioxidant status and energy production within the liver, again in this context, might be upregulated. And then as ITTP gets out of the bloodstream, this angiogenesis returns. And with upregulated mitochondrial function, this increased angiogenesis, which occurs after surgery, restores liver function and prevents liver failure. It's a little bit of an extrapolation. The scientific evidence really didn't go this much in depth, but I'm just using basic human biology and knowing how the mitochondria and angiogenesis biomarkers functions in the process of recovery. So again, if you had surgery, maybe a single administration of Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate might improve the outcome of surgery, but prolonged administration of Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate post-surgery is probably not recommended because you're suppressing angiogenesis for longer periods of time and you need the angiogenesis for recovery overall. ITPP might be a potential treatment option for various cardiovascular diseases, including heart disease, adverse cardiac remodeling, aka heart enlargement. That's very promising for guys who train insane and have elevated blood pressure, obviously. You don't want left ventricular hypertrophy, and Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate, again based on animal models and in vitro studies, might be able to prevent that from happening, including something like an angiotensin receptor blocker or beta blocker, which also is known to prevent negative cardiac remodeling. ITPP might be a potential treatment option for coronary artery disease, pulmonary hypertension, and organ hypoxia, stemming from animal models using either mice or rats, and in vitro studies using cardiomyocytes. And these studies show that ITTP reverses hypoxia-induced and ischemia-induced cardiac injury. ITPP has promising anti-cancer and anti-tumor properties stemming from human subjects, that single clinical trial we just highlighted, and various animal models using rats or mice, and in vitro studies using various cancer cell lines. ITTP activates tumor suppressor gene phosphate and tensin homolog. ITTP inhibits phosphoinositide 3 kinase. It reduces vascular endothelial growth factor and hypoxia-inducible factor 1 alpha levels. It reduced angiogenesis overall, and it might have a synergistic effects with oxygen-dependent anti-tumor therapies like radio, photo, and immunotherapy. And lastly, Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate has calcium chelating properties stemming from that single human clinical trial. It depletes serum electrolytes, particularly serum calcium levels, unless that's exogenously administered at the same time they administer ITPP intravenously. This was observed at higher dosages beyond 22.6 milligrams per 1 kilogram of body weight intravenously 3 times weekly. Not entirely sure if that translates to oral Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate administrations, which probably have a lower bioavailability compared to intravenous administrations. And again, that will be 2,260 milligrams per 100 kilogram bodybuilder, which is generally not something I would recommend. And I never see in the bodybuilding or endurance sports Community. I will tell you this, I've done plenty of blood work on Myo-Inositol Trispyrophosphate, as many of my consultation clients have done blood work on ITPP, and none of them experience any kind of depletion in serum electrolyte levels, and serum calcium levels stay exactly within normal parameters, don't even budge. So I don't think this is something to worry about. But again, if you escalate the dose upwards for whatever crazy reason, maybe you have cancer and that's why you want to increase it. But if you're otherwise healthy, I don't see a reason to do it. But if you escalate the dose upwards, you might have, again, anti-angiogenesis and reduction in serum electrolyte levels, especially calcium levels, which would ultimately affect your blood pressure and overall performance. So don't do that, obviously.